Hey, Paul Sterling here, and welcome to the From Feeling Ignored to Being Adored teleseminar, webinar actually, webinar. I'm used to doing teleseminars. So here you go. We're about to start the broadcast. There is an attendees. You can chat over here, so if you could put in where you're calling or where you're watching from, what your name is, that'd be awesome. And any questions you have, you can put them in over there too. So this will be an interesting, fun evening, giving you as much as possible about how to go from feeling ignored to being adored. And what I want to do is start with you, which is why are you on this webinar? What is it that you'd like to know more about as far as relationships go? Because I've got what I'm ready to teach right now, and what I want to do is go through that. So this is going to be one of those webinars where you can get all the information, but it's about interaction too. So type in your questions, and we will take it away from there. Here is one of the things I like to say is that the quality of your relationship is based on the quality of your communication. And when that communication falls apart, so does the relationship. So how do you get that relationship back? How do you turn it around? How do you go from actually having what I call the downward spiral? And I'm used to using flip charts. So these are my new, Alex Mendozian told me about this. He's a guy who does a lot of webinar stuff. So he was the one who said, do these. Rather than these big flip charts, these. So here is the downward spiral. And tonight is going to be how do you take a downward spiral and turn it into an upward spiral? How do you stop things that are going wrong and turn them around so that you end up having the relationship of your dreams? So again, if you got on the call later, this is Paul Sterling. You're on the How to Go From Feeling Ignored to Being Adored workshop. And I can see people are in from Washington, from New York City, from, well, some other places. I can't read that. Anyway, tonight's call is going to be about an hour and 15 minutes, and it's going to be very interactive. You can ask any questions you want. And I'm going to tell you the purpose of the call, and it may be different than the purpose that you think that you got on the call for. And then I'm going to introduce a little bit more about my history. So the purpose of the call, and a lot of times when people get on a call like this and they think that the purpose of the call is to gather information. So I'm just telling you in advance, yes, there will be lots of information. In fact, let me see if I can do this. I'm going to try to cover all this information. But that's not the purpose of the call. The purpose of the call is to help you make some decisions, like 3 or 4 decisions. And if you think about it, if you talk to somebody who wants to lose weight, who wants to get in shape, one of the things that they have, you could ask anybody, and they've got the information. What is the information? The information says, to lose weight and get in shape, you need to do 3 things. You need to eat less, you need to eat better, and you need to work out. So that's the information. Almost everybody has lots of good information on what it takes to turn a relationship around. Why don't they? Is because they haven't made these key decisions. So the purpose of the call is about transformation. Transformation is making a change so that tomorrow the relationship's different from today. And if you think about it, where do you want your relationship to be 3, 4, 5 months from now? Where do you want it to be? What breakthroughs do you want to have? What changes do you want to have? And hopefully tonight will give you some information that will allow you to make some decisions to be able to create the transformation. So to give you an idea, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Paul Sterling. I am a relationship and intimacy coach. But I didn't start out to be that way. There's an expression that says almost every master started out as a disaster. And so I went through 1 divorce, 3 broken engagements. I think I've made almost every relationship mistake possible before I stumbled on something that transformed the way I am in relationship now. And I'm very different. And not only am I different, but I ended up teaching people. I was different enough that my friends and family started asking me about it, and I started teaching this. And I've taught this anywhere from lots and lots of couples to I teach this methodology, communication methodology, in prison. I teach it to at-risk youth. I've taught it at Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. Asked me to come in. I've taught it there. So I teach it around the country and around the world, and it's an amazing methodology. So I went from not really understanding disasters, not understanding relationships, otherwise known as disasters, and to being able to really understand them and have insights, not only to mine, but to help other people have transformations in their relationship. And part of that journey was studying with people who knew a whole lot more than me. And the journey towards personal growth started with a guy named Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then from him, that got me excited, the idea that I could actually change my mind, change my beliefs, and it would change my reality, change my life. And then that led me to a guy named Tony Robbins. And Tony is still, to this day, many years later, a mentor of mine. And I ended up going and working for Tony. And then years later, he hired me to come back and teach his upper level group of franchisees that he was teaching at one point. So it was an incredible honor for me to have Tony Robbins introducing me. I was a little starstruck. So I went from Tony, and Tony taught me really about how do you change beliefs, how do you change patterns, habits, beliefs. Then I studied with a guy named Marshall Thurber, and why I'm telling you the background is so you understand when I'm about to reveal the information I want you to know where it came from. So Marshall studied with a guy named Dr. Deming. Deming's the guy who taught the Japanese about quality and productivity. So Deming was all about systems. So if you take what Tony taught about changing beliefs and habits and patterns, and then you add systems, that made a much clearer picture about relationships. And there was still one missing piece, and there was another guy I studied with, Marshall Rosenberg. And Marshall Rosenberg created something called nonviolent communication. And nonviolent communication was the missing piece. So I put together what I learned from Tony, what I learned from Marshall Thurber, what I learned from Marshall Rosenberg, and came up with my system. And that's what I'm going to introduce you to. And today, if you think about it, the quality of your relationship is not based on the quality of your, well, it is based on the quality of your communication. Sorry. So the quality of your relationship, I'm going to do that over. The quality of your relationship is based on the quality of your communication. And when that communication falls apart, so does your relationship. So what I want you to do, I want you to think about something here, and we're about to dive into some of the content. And what level of relationship do you want? I am a whitewater kayaker. And when you think about it, whitewater kayaking, we've got 5 different classes. We've actually got now a 6th class because people are really crazy, but the 5 classes, class 1 is like a flat lake. And so you don't have to have a lot of skill level when you're on a flat lake. Then class 2, there's some current, you're in a river, you're in a stream, there's some water, there's some rocks, obstacles. You have to have a better level, a skill level. Class 3 is where there's rapids. You really need to know what you're doing. You need to have what they call a wet exit, which means if the kayak gets flipped over, and it's likely in class 3, if the kayak gets flipped over, can you get out of it? And then even more importantly, can you get out of it, but also can you roll it back upright? So can you rescue yourself? Class 4, there's lots of obstacles. It gets pretty dangerous, and if you don't know what you're doing, it's likely that you'll get hurt and possibly killed. And Class 5 is pretty intense. It's a lot of fun. I do Class 4 and Class 5. I'm not a Class 5 boater, but I do Class 5 water every once in a while. I'm in a state of terror. Now, what has kayaking got to do with relationships? Well, with each level of kayaking, as it goes from Class 1 to 2, you need more skills. You need to improve your skills, and you need new skills. So it's the same in relationships. Some people want a relationship, and I'll get into the different types of relationships, and this is really important. Some people want a relationship that's like a Class 1. They don't rock the boat. We want to keep things comfortable. We don't talk about things. We brush them under the rug. We don't need a lot of skills because we don't deal with a lot of stuff. On the other end of the spectrum, some people really want intimate, passionate, loving, committed, courageous relationships full of open and honest and vulnerable communication. To get there, what you need to have is you need to have like Class 5 skills. So let me give you a quick picture. Hopefully, yeah, there we go. This is Class 4, and if you look at that little dot right there, that's all you can see of me going through one of these rapids. That's a tiny bit of my head, and that's my kayaking paddle. And here's one of the critical skills that I was talking about earlier. This is me coming back up right side after being upside down. That's called a roll. And that's what you need in relationships, is to be able to roll back up. And that's what having the communication system, like I said, Tony taught me about changing habits, patterns, and beliefs. Marshall Thurber taught me about systems. And then Marshall Rosenberg taught me about communication. So what I did is I took those and created a system to help communicate the terms that will get you back connected. So you can create almost instant intimacy with anyone. And a lot of the foundation is from these three main people. There's a lot of other people I've studied with, but what they say is some people stand on the shoulders of great people, and that's definitely been it. I have had amazing people. So this is the first decision I want you to think about, is what kind of relationship do you want? Now, here's how the mind tends to work. When something goes wrong, and hopefully you can see this, one of the first places the mind goes is into denial. And especially with men, if something's going wrong in the relationship, the feminine tends to notice it first and go, we need to go see a therapist or a counselor, a relationship coach, and the guys are in denial. Not always. Sometimes it's the men who want to do it, or the masculine. And what I want to do is say that in this call, I'm going to go and talk more about the masculine and the feminine rather than men and women, because this works just as well for gay couples or lesbian couples or straight couples. It works wherever there's relationships. So when something goes wrong, where do people go? One of the first places they go is to denial. And when denial no longer works, then they try to do what? Lay blame. Then they try to justify. And when that doesn't work, they feel a level of shame. When that doesn't work, they want to quit. And then there's a line here. And above the line is where people start to get responsible in a relationship. And above responsible is where love can flourish. So the first decision I want to ask you to make is, what kind of a relationship, what kind do you want? Do you want one where communication is above the line or below the line? So if you could, just type in on the side there, what do you want? Above the line or below the line? It's a quick, make a decision here. Which one works for you? And then also you can say which types have you been in before. And by the way, I keep noticing, I noticed this fingernail. So you might be noticing it too. That's from kayaking on a Class 4 river. I ended up whacking a rock. So this is one of the ramifications of Class 4 boating. All right, so What kind of a relationship do you want, above or below the line? If you want below the line, I totally understand it, but this is probably the wrong place to be, because this is teaching you how to get above the line. Now, this next thing is I call it a writer downer. So you want to write this down. What is the purpose of a relationship? And when I say this, I want to be careful. You might have different ideas. I want you to be open to this, but I want to be careful not to say this is the only purpose. But the more that I study it, the more that this purpose becomes real. So the purpose of relationships is to get your needs met and to help you meet the needs of your partner. So think about this. When you're in a relationship, what are you trying to do? Get needs met. So it's important, if you want to have a great relationship, to know what the needs are. And there are 6 key needs. And part of what I learned these from is from studying with Tony Robbins. And I'm not going to go into detail in this video on that, on this webinar, but I'll give you an overview of the needs. And we could spend a lot of time on that. But the key, those 6 needs, number 1 is for consistency, certainty. So that certainty is like trust, that you trust that you can trust your partner, you can trust the relationship, you want some level of certainty. Then the challenge is, the next need is for variety. So once you've got your certainty set, you also want to have variety. Now, different people have different priorities, which need's most important. Then the next need is for significance and importance. Do you feel like you're significant, important? Do you feel like you're a priority in the relationship? And if you don't, then that will destroy some of your certainty. So that's needs 1, 2, 3. Number 4 is your need for connection and love. And then there's 2 more needs, and these are needs for the relationship, and the next are needs for your spirit, for your soul, for your heart. These are needs. The number 5 is for growth. Is your relationship supporting you growing? And number 6, is it helping you contribute? Because most people that I know really want to contribute. They want to make a difference. That's why I'm doing this call. There's no charge for the call. I'm trying to contribute because that meets a need of mine. Now, if you think about it, in relationships, there's a thing where in banking, you're always making deposits or withdrawals. And if you make too many withdrawals, what do you end up? You end up bankrupt. And see, in relationships, it's the same thing. You're always making either deposits or withdrawals. And if you make too many withdrawals in the relationship, you end up what? Bankrupt. Relationship over. You can still love somebody, but the relationship is over. Why? Because there was too many withdrawals. And the withdrawals can be slow and over a long period of time and just slowly destroy the relationship, or it can be overnight. Someone can have an affair. Someone can lie, cheat, do something destructive, and that's too big a withdrawal, and it's over. So what I want to do is get into how do we make deposits, how do we make withdrawals, and how do we transform the relationship. And how do we do that using communication? And so the purpose of communication is to be able, and this is really a writer downer too, is to be able to enter somebody else's world, to know their stories, their beliefs, what's going on in their world, and have them enter yours. And I'll get into this again, but I want, when you're trying to enter somebody's world, you want them to feel heard, understood, and valued. So that's part of the purpose of communication. The other part of communication is to be able to express your needs in a way that your lover wants to meet them. First place, that they actually understand what they are and that they want to meet them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to do this. So put your hands together like this. And what I'm going to do is tell you to press. And when I say press, press really hard with your right hand. Ready, get set, go. Press, press harder, press harder. Now, stop. Look at where your hands are. Most likely, your hands are right in front, just where you started. And yet, what I said was press really hard with what? Your right hand. What did your left hand do? And this is critically important. Your left hand resisted and pushed back. And this is what happens very often in communication, is when we're communicating, we're pushing on somebody, and what do? They resist and push back. You look at what's happening in the world internationally right now, all of the upsets and the arguments and the fights and the wars and the battles going on. What is it? It's communication, that people are forcing each other and they're pushing back. And do you want a relationship that uses that kind of communication? Because it ends up down here. You're wrong, no, you're wrong. It ends up bad, stupid, wrong, laying blame, justifying shame. It's all of this stuff. And that rarely creates love and intimacy. So hopefully you have a pen and a piece of paper in front of you. And this is going to give you the big picture. So what I want to do is give you the big picture of relationships as far as I can tell. And I've studied this for over 20 years, longer than that. And this is a simplified look at what the big picture is. So here you go. The big picture of relationships, there's 3 parts. Number 1 is friend. Are you friends? And a friend is someone who respects you, is loyal to you, who understands you. The second thing is lover. So you want to be a friend and a lover. And a lover is, there's intimacy, there's passion, there's romance. And when I say intimacy, there's physical intimacy, there's a sex life, and there's emotional intimacy, there's a connection from the heart. And the third one over here is partner. And a partner is someone where you have the same vision and values and goals. You're trying to achieve similar things in life. And you feel supported, and you feel like you're on a team. So watch what happens, because a lot of relationships don't have all 3. They want all 3, but they have 1 or 2 of these. So if they're just friends, they're called roommates. If they're just partners, it's called a business arrangement. If they're a partner and a friend, a lot of times this is what happens in marriage. They're so busy, they're friends, but they're so busy with their goals and like raising the kids and all that, that they forget this part. This part falls out. And unless, this is like a garden, unless you're constantly watering and weeding the garden, what happens? The weeds will take your garden. So what I want you to think about, this is decision number 2. Number 1 was, do you want a relationship above the line or below the line? And are you willing to do what it takes to be above the line? Because it's easy to say, yes, I want that, but it's not always easy to do. This is your second decision. So I want to hear, just type in over here again, what do you want? Do you want 1, 2, or all 3 of these? We'll come back to this. Again, what they are is friend, partner, lover. By the way, if just lover, it's called booty call. If friend and lover, it's called friends with benefits. So a lot of people just have 1 or 2 of these. So hopefully this is making sense. And I want you to think about it. What are you getting so far from this webinar? Because I am going as quickly as I can. And by the way, at the end of this, I'll tell you how you can get, if you want to see this again, I'm going to make that available. And if you want all the handouts, I can make that available too. You just got to let me know that you want that. So at the end of this, make sure in the box over there to say, hey, remember to get us the information. Now, these were the 3 different parts of a relationship. These are the 3 different types of relationship. And yes, this is an overgeneralization, by the way. These 3 parts, 3 types. The bottom The bottom one is called survival, and that's where the relationship is more important than the individuals in the relationship. So, in other words, I don't care if we like each other, we're not getting a divorce. I don't care if we hate each other, we're not getting a divorce. The relationship or the marriage, as it used to be, the marriage is much more important than anything else. So we're staying together. That is a relationship that's based on survival. The next one up is one that's based on comfort. And in a comfort relationship, it's almost like you become roommates. You don't rock the boat. You're good friends, but the passion is gone, the love is gone, the intimacy is gone, and you don't have difficult conversation, and you're not open and honest and vulnerable because that's really uncomfortable. The other thing that ends up happening though in comfort is people end up having affairs because when the passion's gone, they still love each other, they still want to be friends, but their need. And remember I said that we're talking about the needs, and if your needs aren't getting met, what ends up happening is you end up going somewhere else to get your needs met. And that's the thing, is if you're not meeting your partner's needs, they're gonna go somewhere else, either mentally or physically or both. And sometimes people have an affair, and it's like you go, how can they have an affair? They still love me. Why are they having an affair? Why? Because their needs aren't getting met. So it's really important to be able to have open and honest conversation so you get clear what your partner's needs are and you're clear what your needs are. And you don't expect your partner to read your mind. You're able to express it. So here we go. We're bouncing back to this. The bottom one is survival. The next one up is comfort. The third one is growth. Now, it's important to know which one you're in. In growth, you'll find people like on this call. This call is about growth. People who want to grow, people who want to learn, they're on calls or webinars like this. They're reading books. They've got a relationship coach or a counselor or therapist. They're going to workshops. They're interested in growth. If you're interested in comfort, there's a collision. Like my ex, my former wife, who I'm still good friends with, she was much more interested in what? Comfort. I was interested in growth. Her idea of a great weekend would be staying at home or going for a hike or doing something quiet. My idea of a great weekend is going to a workshop, being around 100 or 200 people, learning something new, going and studying with Tony, doing a fire walk. Now, what I want to be careful of is I'm not judging that any one of these is better than any other, but it's really, really, really important that you know which one that you want. Because if you're into growth and your partner's into comfort, you're going to be constantly in conflict. So what I want you to do is take a second. This is decision number 3. There'll probably be more than 3 decisions, but decision number 3, which one is your dominant one? And we all go back and forth. We all definitely, there's days like if you're feeling sick and not feeling good, you might forget growth. The hell with growth. I want comfort or I want survival. I want to know that my lover is going to be there, cook me chicken soup or whatever. But on average, which one of these 3 do you want the most? So if you were talking about it, say, I want to be in a growth relationship, comfort, or survival. So just type that in so I've got that over there. All right. I know I'm dumping a lot on you, and you can definitely watch this more than once, so I would do that. So make sure that you stay to the end, get the link, and watch it again and again. This part is critical because there's 3 critical skills that you need to be able to take a relationship and keep it going upward. I talked about it earlier. Downward spiral. How do you get out of a downward spiral, turn it around, and end up with an upward spiral? Reconnect. Because for a lot of people, what they do is their downward spiral goes down, it keeps going down, and they end up in divorce. Or, here's another, this is an advanced tip for you. They don't get divorced, but they basically what? They're right here, they're just below the line, they've quit. They're in a relationship, but they've really quit showing up. They've quit participating. And I'm seeing most of the people, like I thought, on this call are interested in growth. And growth isn't always fun. It's uncomfortable. It's challenging. You're being open and vulnerable. And by the way, intimacy is about risk. It is not about safety. People think it's about safety. But if I'm being really intimate with my beloved, who's an amazing human being, I'm revealing my fears and doubts, my vulnerabilities, and my dreams and desires. And when I grew up in my family, if you revealed that shit, that was used against you. You know, in my family of origin early on, not now, because not now, we are really close. But early on, anything you said could and would be used against you. So you were not vulnerable. You were not intimate. You protected yourself by holding it back. A lot of times, though, this pattern, it shows up in our relationship, and we're not open and honest and vulnerable in our relationships. And we wonder why there's no intimacy. Intimacy is about risk. And I'm going to give you the 3 skills that you need to turn it around and become more intimate and turn a downward spiral into an upward spiral. Now, you're not going to be able to master them in this call. I want you to be introduced to them. So here are the 3 critical skills. And underneath each of these, we'll go a little more in depth. So number 1, and this is a writer downer, number 1, clear up the past. Number 2 is get present. And number 3 is to create a future. So if you've ever heard somebody talk about, well, I want commitment. Commitment is about creating a future. And why people don't commit, a lot of times because there's too much of the past in the present. And it doesn't even have to be the past from your relationship. It can be the past from other relationships. Men are. Women are. I know that the second that I'm open and vulnerable and commit to them, boy, they use you, they cheat on you, they lie to you, they take advantage, all the rest of that kind of stuff. So what we want to do is learn how to clear up the past, get present, because there's nothing sexier, there's nothing more alive, there's nothing that brings you more over into this lover thing than when somebody is present with you, when they can look you in the eye and not waver, when they can listen to you, and when they can communicate with you in a way that you feel heard, understood, and valued. That brings you instantly present. So I'm going to get a little into that. And then there's 7 habits and patterns and beliefs to help you create a bright future. So let's dive in. These are the 3 master skills, critical skills. Does this make sense? So if this makes sense, go, yeah, this makes sense. By the way, it's fun for me if you interact over in the chat box. So yes, this makes sense. Here we go. So remember I said the 3 master skills. Number 1, clearing up the past. So clearing up the past, one of the first part of that is to be able to stop doing damage. So if you're doing something that's creating upset, like that's the first thing to do, is stop doing damage. And at the beginning of this webinar, I talked about if someone wants to get in shape, one of the things they need to do if they want to lose weight is stop doing damage. Stop eating stuff like cake or drinking beer or all, you know, it's like stop doing the stuff that's creating the problem and then start doing the stuff that's beneficial, like jogging. Like I jog every morning. I'm sorry, I don't want to overstate my jogging capabilities. I jog about 1.5 miles, and it's a combination of jog and walk, but it keeps me in shape. So how do you stop doing damage? Well, one of the ways to stop doing damage is to know what the 5 triggers are. And let me just ask you, and I want you to, like, again, how do I do this with that hand? Enter something over here in the chat box. How much fun is it to talk to somebody who's triggered? Is it a lot of fun? And how much fun is it for you when you're triggered? Is it a lot of fun to have a conversation? Does that promote open, honest, compassionate, vulnerable communication? Not likely. So would it be good to know what the 5 most common triggers are? Yes or no? I'm going to dive into those 5 triggers right now, and I'm going to go a little bit in depth on some of them. On the videos you can watch and see all 5 of the triggers. So I'm just going to go into a couple of them here. And what they are, by the way, is case building. Case building, I talked about that earlier. Anything you say can and will be used against you. My family, early on, not now, early on, was very good at case building. Next one, storytelling. And storytelling is what the mind is a meaning-making machine. So you make up stories about what something means. If your partner comes home late, if they said they were going to call and they don't call, if they make an agreement with you and don't keep the agreement, what happens is our mind instantly goes into making up stories. Now, just because you know that, it doesn't mean that that's not going to continue to happen. It will continue to happen. What understanding this does is it helps you realize it's just a story. I'm making up a story about it, and you get less attached to it. You still know it's there, but you become vulnerable and say to your partner, I'm telling myself the story that when you didn't call, it meant that you don't love me anymore. Could you tell me your story? And your partner's story can be, my story is that I was overwhelmed and busy and I just didn't have the energy. My cup was full, and I'll get into cup stuffing in a minute. Then message assuming is the next one. And there's a whole way, because what Marshall Rosenberg said, the creator of nonviolent communication, said, the natural outcome of most communication is misunderstanding. And so if you understand that, then you know that the message you're sending is very likely to be confused, distorted. It's going to be different than the message they receive. So what you learn is how do you be able to hear what's going on in their head. So as I said earlier, with communication, you're able to what? Enter their world and use communication to do it. And message assuming, and then you can be message clarifying. So there's storytelling or story busting. You could be case building or connection building. And then cup stuffing is, I'll actually hold off on that because I'm going to go in detail into the storytelling and cup stuffing. And the fatal F's. The fatal F's, the way the masculine listens to the feminine, when the feminine is in pain and comes to the masculine hears it, it's either my fault or my responsibility. So what do we want to do? If you're in pain, we want to fix you. And it goes against our grain to do what the feminine tends to want. The feminine wants to be heard, understood, and valued, not fixed. The masculine wants to fix you because that's where, if we fix you, then you're no longer in pain and we're no longer feeling bad that we did something wrong. Plus, that's where we get our rewards in work and in jobs, when we can fix problems. So if you want to set your partner up, and by the way, I've got plenty of wonderful feminine energy in me, because if I'm hurting, what I typically want is I want to be heard, understood, and valued. I want empathy. I don't want to be fixed. So I can totally relate to all of these. So what you want to do is not fix your partner. You want to listen to your partner. And if your partner comes to you in pain, you can say, do you want empathy or do you want ideas? Do you want me just to listen or do you want suggestions? And when you go to your partner, you can do the same thing. You can set them up to win, and you can go, honey, I just want you to listen right now. Can you listen? Do you have capacity to hear me? I don't want any suggestions. Would that be okay? That's a way to set it up to win. So let me go in detail a little bit into storytelling and cup stuffing, because I want you to be able to walk away with some practical tools. Like I want you to walk away with the big picture, this, big picture, this, specific details of what you can do. And again, I'm asking you to make decisions. What I want you to think about and make a decision on and a commitment to is how different, think about this, how different would your relationship be if you could get rid of about 80% of the triggers in it? The unnecessary arguments, the unnecessary fights, all that cold shoulder, the withholding love, intimacy, sex, the sleeping in the same bed but feeling miles away from each other, or sleeping on the couch, or withholding all the things that you love to do with each other, trying to punish each other into doing it better. What would it be like if you could avoid most of the triggers without avoiding having the conversations? The conversations about money or future or decisions about kids or relationship or where you're going to live or how you're going to live. Would that be cool? I want you to just make another decision. Are you going to commit to like mastering these triggers and getting them out of your communication so that you can have more intimate, compassionate communication? Yes or no? Are you committed? Just put it in there. I'm committed or I'm not committed. Now, storytelling. I'm going to tell you a story about storytelling. One of my partners, one of my former partners, we taught this together. So you learn, once you start learning this, it's like shorthand. And I have an ebook. Oh, by the way, for some of you, this webinar is going to be enough. For other people, this is just barely enough, and you want more. You want to be able to take it into your life. You want to know, how do I get more information here? At the end of this, if it's okay with you, I'm going to share what you can do to learn more about it, where there's some resources, and actually I'm offering for a few people a 45-minute coaching session, a free coaching session for you to see if you can have a breakthrough in that time period or have a plan that what you want to do in the future of your relationship. So that's something to think about. Anyway, back to this, storytelling. My former partner, we were in bed together, and on my side of the bed, there's an overhead switch that's out there that I can reach that turns off the overhead light. So the switch is for the overhead light. It's not an overhead switch, it's a switch for the overhead light. On her side was a small reading lamp. And so at night, when we both be reading, and I'd go to sleep, I'd just turn off my side and let her read. And one night, I went to turn off my side light, and I looked over and I said, she was really upset. And I go, honey, what's going on? What story are you telling yourself? You look upset. She said, I'm telling myself the story that my needs, remember I said the purpose of relationship, now I've kind of buried it, is to get your needs met, and my needs don't matter to you. Oh, here we go. Yeah, her need didn't matter to me. That would be the need for significance. Is she a priority? Am I making her needs important? So she said, I don't think my needs are important to you. You turn off the good light, I get to read by the crappy light. And that hurts my feelings. So I thought about it, and I fed it back. I made sure that the message she sent was the message I heard, and the way that I did that is I fed it back. I said, so honey, are you feeling frustrated or hurt because you need your needs to matter? And when I turned off the light, you interpreted that I wasn't caring about you. And she got it. She really got it that I got it. And so what I did is I said, can you hear me now? And so she could, because once, this is that cup one, once her cup was emptied, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute, once her cup was emptied, then she had room to hear something new. And so I said, well, here's the deal. I'm telling myself the story that if I don't turn that light out and I go to sleep, then you have to get out, go around the bed, turn out the light, come back in the dark, stub your toe. It's going to wake you up. It's going to take another half an hour to get to sleep. So I totally thought I was what? I thought I was going to, I thought I was taking care of her needs. But we both had a different what? Story. And it was only when we revealed our stories to each other that we got to see where there was a difference. And so next night, I go to say I'm in my habit and pattern, and I go to turn out the light, but then I remember, I go, oh, I know what story she's telling herself. So I go, honey, now that I know what story you're telling yourself about the light, I'll leave the light on. What do you think her response was? No, now that I know your story, turn the light off. Why? Because now it met her needs. See, changing that story gave me a lot of leverage. But if I didn't know about storytelling, what we would have had is we would have had two people that really loved and cared about each other in conflict. He doesn't care about my needs. I'm caring about her needs. How come she doesn't understand? Like, can you imagine how many battles are happening out there right now, or how many you've been in, where there's just a misunderstanding? There's a story that's not clear. Hopefully that makes sense. If it makes sense, just put a little note over here. I got it. That makes sense. Now we're going to move on to this one. And by the way, you can get my ebook. It's like 20 bucks. It goes through all of these in detail. Or if you want to check out it for free, you can check out the there's some videos that I've got online. And remember, though, those are going to give you information. What you really want is transformation. You want to change your habits, patterns, and beliefs. That's when transformation happens. And it can happen like in a second. I'll give you an example in a minute of transformation. Cup stuffing. So cup stuffing, and I wish I had brought a cup over here. I'll grab it. This is not a cup. This is a container. It's a Indian vase beaded container. Anyway, so if this is full, how much more can I get in it? And hopefully you're saying nothing. What if it's really full? What if what if I yell? Can I get more in it? What if I beg it? Can I get more in it? So what this is metaphorically is if your emotional cup is full, say you came home from work, you got a flat tire, a speeding ticket, and before you left, the boss yelled at you and gave you a ton of extra work. When you come home emotionally, is your cup full or empty? I'm guessing your cup is full. And if your lover comes up to you and says, honey, I want to talk about our vacation, even something really nice, when your cup is full, how much more can you put in there? None. So cup stuffing is when you're trying to put something into a cup that's already full. And you can do this. There's two sides of it. Like if you've got an important conversation with your partner, you can go, honey, I really want to talk to you about our vacation. Is your cup full? Or I want to talk about our finances, or I want to talk about our jobs, or whatever it is. How is your cup? Is it empty or full? Or you can come home and say, my cup is really full. I need to empty it. I need to, and there's several ways of emptying it. There's as many ways as there are people, but there's like, do you need space? Which is one of the main things. So do you need just some time by yourself? This tends to be more of a masculine trait, but feminine needs it too. Like when the masculine comes home from work, they tend to need some space to empty their cup. When my partner, well, my former partner, when she used to come home and she was working with at-risk youth and all this other stuff, one of the ways that she would empty her cup is to watch the news. Now, to me, watching the news fills my cup. But whatever it is, it's important. So what you can do is, if your partner comes to you and your cup is full, you can say, cup full, but I'll get back to you in 30 minutes. Because if you say cup full, it is your job to then actually go and get it cleared up. So it's not a way of just avoiding it and pushing it away. Because if you do that a couple of times, basically the trust is going to disappear. And by the way, trust is the foundation for all these parts of the relationship. For friendship, for partnership, for lover, trust is a foundational part of it. And trust is also a foundational part for moving the relationship up above the line. So if you say cup full, that's important. And then make sure you go cup full, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I'll get back to you. And sometimes it's only for a couple of minutes. I could be working on my computer, and if someone comes up to ask me a question, if I stop focusing on what I'm focusing on, I'll lose all my work. I'll get distracted. So I'll just go cup full, 10 minutes. That makes sense. What I want to ask you is, how different would your relationship be if you and your partner knew about all 5 of these and were constantly practicing the opposite, rather than the case building, connection building, rather than storytelling, story busting, where you're revealing your stories to each other, rather than message assuming, you go message clarifying, where you actually feed it back to each other. And rather than cup stuffing, you empty each other's cups. So if your partner says their cup is full, you can say, do you need empathy or do you need space? And the last one, fatal F's, understanding how to not fix, fight, or flee, but actually give them what they need, how to be, and this is where we come into number 2, where you get to be present. And again, I want to say that I'm covering a lot of information here. And I've got a little bit more to go. And part of it is I want to give you everything possible, because I don't know if we'll ever work together again, or we will work together. Some of you who are on the call are already clients of mine, and we're going to be working together a lot, and you've made a big commitment, not to me, but to yourself, to be able to not only understand everything I've gone through, which the first time through it is a little overwhelming, but when you get it clear, it ends up being pretty easy. Because what is it? You're either clearing up the past, getting present, or creating a bright future. Communication is all about what? Entering somebody else's world. Your relationship is all about meeting needs, figuring out what your needs are, and communicating them in a way that moves you above the line so you feel responsible, and you create a relationship where you're partners and lovers and friends. All right, so getting present. And what does present mean? One of the great examples is I was getting off an airplane. I ended up traveling a lot. I just got back not long ago from Croatia, which was an amazing trip. And I was getting off, I don't know if it was that airplane or a different airplane, but I stood up, and in front of me, in the the row in front of me, this woman had her son, I think about maybe 2 years old, strapped to her. So her son was facing backwards. The son was facing me. She was facing forward. And our eyes met. And it was the most magnificent thing, because that young child, there was no fear or anger or anything, but there was nothing but curiosity and interest and a wide open heart. And we stared at each other for, it doesn't sound like that long, but try it sometime, maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes. It might have even been longer. But it was the most amazing connection, because there was no story, no chatter. So when you can connect with your lover like that, when you can just sit and be present with them, when you can make love and be present with them, when you can keep the eye contact, when you're kissing, which we're taught not to, like we're taught to keep our eyes closed when we're kissing. And it's like, if you can keep your eyes open and actually see into their heart, it's an amazing thing. So this second skill is how to be present. So if you're ready for more information, just type in over here, bring it on. So I need to know that you're ready for the next chunk of the information, because we really have just about 2 chunks left, and then we're done. And this one is a critical one, so I want, just type over there, bring it on if you're ready for more. Okay. Looks like some people are ready for more. So here we go. When you're listening, what result do you want? And I'll give you an idea. What I think you want, well, actually, I'm going to say this a different way, and I'm going to come back to that. When you're speaking, what do you want to feel when you're done speaking? When you're speaking, I think what you want is you want to feel heard, understood, and valued. So when you're listening, what you want is you want your partner to feel what? Heard, understood, and valued. So this is part of what I call a communication star. So this is the part where you're listening so that your partner feels heard, understood, and valued. And what happens is when they feel heard, understood, and valued, trust goes way up. Now, what stops us from doing this is this one right here. A lot of times what happens is we're afraid that if we understand them, that they will think that we agree with them. And if they're saying, well, I think that you don't love and care about me right now. And part of you, your whole body is going, that is so not true. And you want to argue with them. And what happens is the more that you argue with them, what happens is the more that they push back. I love you. No, you don't. I love you. Oh, and like this whole battle back and forth. Versus, and this is not easy, it's simple. Partner says, you don't love me. And you just take a breath and enter their what? Enter their world and go, honey, I'm wondering if right now you're not feeling very loved right now, and maybe you're needing some reassurance and understanding. What did I do? In just a single sentence, I entered their world, and they walk, well, they don't walk away, but they feel heard, understood, and valued. And I can, if you really want to go deep, you go, tell me more. Tell me more. Like, what would your relationship be like if even in the most difficult conversations, both of you walked away feeling heard, understood, and valued? How amazing would that be? So that's half of the star. See, the star has got 2 halves. So hopefully you're ready for the second half of the star. So the second half, by the way, I've got all of these little mini flip charts here. Thank you, Alex Mendozian, for teaching me about this. He is an amazing mentor and master teacher. So this is when I'm communicating. So when I'm communicating, I have 3 C's. How many C's? 3. So what do you think the 3 C's are? So the first one over here is I want to be conscious. And what conscious means to me is I want to be consciously aware of what I want you to hear. And I also want to be conscious and understand that what you think you heard is often very different than what I think I said. And if my intent in communication is to enter your world or have you enter mine, it's really important for me to understand what you think you heard. So part of what I do if I'm speaking consciously, and it's an intimate conversation, not normal. See, I am not teaching you about normals. Some of you are going, this is not the way we normally communicate. No, it is not the way people normally communicate. People normally communicate below the line. They're down there laying blame, justifying. Watch our politicians. Watch what's happening around the world. Lots of people are communicating down here. They are not communicating above the line. This, what I'm teaching you right now, is all above the line communication. So number one, you become conscious of what it is you want them to hear. And what I need to do periodically is I go, all right, can you tell me what you heard me say? So I'll give you an example. I might say, honey, can you help and take out the trash? If my partner reacts and is really upset, I go, wow, what did you hear me say? Oh, I heard you say that I never help around the house and I need to do more chores. And I might go, wow, so you heard that. And the temptation is to correct her. Go, that's not what I said. You never hear me. And then all of that, that's not what I do. What I do is go, thank you. Thank you for telling me what you heard. Let me try again, because that's really not, I wanted you to hear something different. I wanted you to hear that I'm feeling a little overwhelmed and I want to get done early so that we have time to snuggle on the couch or whatever it is. So, number one, become conscious. And, oh, someone's guessing there. Good guesses on the C's. So, conscious. The second one is compassionate. So, conscious, I'm trying to enter your world and have you enter my world, and I'm conscious that it's not an easy task, that I might have to do a lot of feedback, create a communication loop where I'm feeding it back and you're feeding it back. Next one is compassion. And compassion means to meet somebody where they're at. If they're in pain, if they're angry, if they're upset, if they're feeling lonely, rather than say, you shouldn't feel that way, that doesn't help. It rarely helps anybody to tell them that they shouldn't feel the way that they currently feel. Compassion is to meet them exactly where they're at. Honey, are you feeling sad? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you feeling disappointed? Got it. Is there more? Can I meet you there? And just to meet them from your heart to their heart. Compassion is about entering their world without judgment. You know, if you've got kids, this works incredibly well with kids too. Your kids come home, they're being bullied at school. The temptation is to dive in and fix it rather than just be compassionate. Honey, are you, or they're overwhelmed with homework. Honey, are you feeling overwhelmed with your homework and needing some understanding and maybe even needing some acknowledgement for how hard you're trying? So this first C, conscious. The second C, compassionate. The third C is courageous. And courageous comes, and hopefully I'm right about this, but courageous comes from the heart. It's from le coeur, I believe, from the French, from the heart. And courage is to come from the heart. And to, rather than come, the temptation is to come judgmentally. Good, bad, right, wrong, should, shouldn't. All that language is building a case against somebody, and all it does is push them away. And courage is coming from your own heart. When you yelled at our son, I felt sad and disappointed. Rather than you shouldn't yell at our son, I felt sad and disappointed because I have a real need for compassion and understanding. And I'm wondering what was going on for you that caused you to do that. Rather than you're being a total bitch and you shouldn't do that because that hurts our kid, that rarely helps create an open conversation. Or you're being a real bastard, or whatever it is. So when you put them together, what do you get? When you're listening, your lover feels heard, understood, and valued. And when you're speaking, you come from conscious compassion and courage. How different, and somebody put commitment in there, and yeah, it's actually, I'll ask you a question. How different would your relationship be if you put these, and this is sort of what it looks like, a little overwhelming there, but simple. How different would your relationship be if this is how you communicated? So I'm asking you to make one last decision here, or I'll maybe make, no, I can't keep that. Maybe one or two more decisions, but I want you to make a commitment that this is the way you're interested in communicating. If it is, if it's not the way you're interested in communicating, don't make that commitment. What I want you to do is, if it is just make a commitment over here and say, I'm committed to communicating that way. Because you know what happens is you end up more present in your relationship. You end up more present in your communication. And you end up spending more time being intimate with your lover, both physically and emotionally. Because there's nothing more that creates more physical intimacy than emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy tends to lead towards physical intimacy. When your lover feels heard, understood, and valued, they want to open their body to you. If they don't feel heard, understood, and valued, you can forget that. No interest in opening their body. So I'm going to zip through the last couple of parts here. The last one is the 7 keys. And I'm not going to go through the 7 keys. They're on one of the videos, and I want to keep my commitment on time, and I want to be able to end this in about, at the most, I think 10 minutes. But what I want you to know is that the 7 keys are about creating habits, patterns, and beliefs, and looking at what are your beliefs, because most people don't ever look at what are their beliefs. And I'm going to do this on the fly and ad-libbing, yay! So stick with me here, because this is really important. All right, so you're on this call for one reason. Everybody on this call, and this is not neat handwriting, I just did this on the fly. You're all on this call because you want what's in this box, and what that is a very butchered R. So you want some new results. So to get a result, what do you have to take? Actions. If you want a different result, what do you need to take? Different actions. So what controls the results you're getting or not getting in your life is the actions. So what controls the actions that you're taking or not taking is your beliefs. So most of you, or a lot of you, are probably on the call because you want to get different, you want to take different actions because you want different results, but you don't know where the real leverage is. Because if you try to take actions, like new actions, without changing your beliefs, because your beliefs control your actions control your result. If you don't change your beliefs, you're going to end up going back to your old habits, patterns, and beliefs. Well, you're going to go back to getting your old results. Now, here's the challenge. Your beliefs control your actions control your results. What controls your beliefs? What controls your beliefs a lot of times is your past results. Unless you create, and the truth is this might be the most important one of all of the charts I've showed you, and I did it on the fly. Sorry about that. But what controls your beliefs is either your past results or a new vision. And being able to see your beliefs. Like in America, we're taught you should die for your beliefs. And I go, no, 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 no. That is so retarded. I'm sorry. I'm probably pushing some buttons and being politically incorrect. But a lot of your beliefs were created by an angry, upset 5-year-old that had no friggin' idea on how the world worked. And they created their beliefs. And unless you go in and consciously change those beliefs, those are still operating your relationship. So a lot of times what happens is we have a 5-year-old operating our marriage or our relationship, and we wonder why it doesn't work. So here's the thing. To be able to do this, and this is, remember I talked earlier that I studied systems. If you look at everything I've been doing, it's all around systems, the system of relationship. The triangle, you're looking at all the different components, and you're looking at the habits, patterns, and beliefs. This is a system of doing it. Now here's the big challenge, is that symptoms, and this is a writer-downer. So this is a what? A writer-downer. Symptoms are visible, systems are not. The causes are invisible. The symptoms are visible. And what do we deal with a lot in our culture? We deal with the symptoms. What is our drug industry all about? Is to relieve the symptoms. We don't want to look at what's causing the, it's like we're going to take diet pills because we're dealing with the symptom rather than change our eating habits, because that's dealing with the what? the cause or the system. So how this ties in here is the actions that we're trying to deal with is we're trying to deal with the symptoms. We're trying to change what the results we're getting without actually looking at the cause. And the challenge here is it's almost impossible to see what our beliefs are without some help. If you think about it, what a coach is, and I said I'm a relationship coach, and what a coach is a lot like a mirror. Why do you look at a mirror? Because a mirror allows you to see what you can't see. Like, I can't see my face. Here, hold your finger on the end of your nose. Can you see the tip of your nose, or can you see the tip of your finger? No, because it's like too close. A lot of times our beliefs are so close that we can't see them. But if you want to make the biggest difference, the biggest change in going from having a relationship that's doing this, well, no, doing this, downward spiral, to doing this, you're going to have to change your beliefs. If you want to move from being below the line to above the line, you're going to have to change your what? Beliefs. So how do you do that? Well, part of you can do that by looking at what are the actions you're currently taking and start to make that visible. Like, you look and go, for me to take that action, what beliefs would I have to have? Or, here's the thing, and I said at the beginning or in the middle of the call that if you want more information, I'm going to tell you how to get more information. So this is that part that I'm going to tell you how you can get more information. One of the ways is just to get, like, my ebook, Stop in the Name of Love. That's, I think it's a $20 ebook. Or my MP3s that go through the 5 mistakes, the 5 triggers, the 4 steps to communication. And that's really my interpretation of Marshall Rosenberg's work. Marshall was the genius behind that. I take no credit for that. I do take credit for being smart enough to see it and teach it to a lot of people. But that's his work. And then the 7 habits. So the MP3s go through that. Or what you can do is you can sign up and have a Ignored to Adored 45-minute breakthrough session with me. And I do that complimentary. And I do it complimentary for several reasons. For 3 main reasons. One is I look at how much suffering goes on in relationships because people don't have this information. And they don't know what to do. And they don't know where to get it. And so if I can make a difference in 45 minutes, like help them walk away with a clear picture of what's really going on in the relationship and what needs to change to make that happen, and a clear plan of what they need to do. And lastly, is this relationship worth saving? Not all relationships are worth saving, which is coming interesting from a guy who's a relationship coach. I'll tell you at the end of the relationship, or you'll know yourself whether this is something that's worth saving, that you want to save, and then a plan of what to do to save it. Now, here's reasons not to have a session with me. What will others think? Time, money, commitment, your past. It will bring up all that stuff. The session is actually free. If you make a commitment and want me to help you implement the plan, there's a commitment, and it does cost money. And most people have never invested in their relationship. They say they have, but they've never, like, said, I'm going to master these skills. I'm going to learn about relationships. So if that's interesting, if you really want to do it, what you can do, and let me see if I've got it up here. Oh, there it is. Well, there's actually something there that it says monthly investment is $497, and actually if you do invest, that's what it would be. But the actual session, you can go to that, and you can go to the session, and I'll actually give you a link that you can open up, and it's magicrelationship.net/session. And what happens there is there's a 7-question survey, and after that 7-question survey, it takes you to something called it's my schedule. I think it's called Time Trade or something, where you can find out if there's any spots available. And if there's a spot available, then you can come and we'll work for about 45 minutes, mostly up to an hour, and figure out whether or not, number one, what's the issue, what's your plan, and do you want to work together? Do you want me to help you implement that plan? And I'm checking you out, you're checking me out, because I only want to work with people that are fun to work with. It's not like, you know, you can't be emotional and be in the middle of trauma and all the rest of that stuff. You can have that, but I'm looking for people who are flexible, who are committed, who are coachable. And before I ask them to make a financial commitment, I want to make sure that it works for them, that they enjoy my way of coaching, and that I enjoy working with them. So if you have any questions at all, go ahead and put it in the chat box, and we'll go from there. So I would love to thank you. And also, so there's two things. One is I would love your questions. Number two is I would love a testimonial. What did you get out of our time together? What made the biggest difference for you? So I am going to do like a rapid fire, not in the exact order, but I am going to go through what I did. So the purpose of relationships is to get what? Get your needs met. And what type of relationship do you want? Now there's growth, comfort, survival. The three different parts of a relationship: partner, lover, friend. And why I think a lot of people got on this call is they wanted to be able to turn a downward spiral into an upward spiral. And the upward spiral can lead you from being in a relationship where there's a lot of denial, laying blame, justifying shame, to getting above the line, being responsible, and a lot more love. Now, we covered a lot of information, but this webinar was not about information. It was about what? Transformation. And the transformation is when you make some key decisions. And hopefully on this call or webinar, you've made some decisions. Now, what are the three critical skills? Getting clear, clearing up the past, getting present, creating a bright future. When you go to clear up the past, we stop doing damage and look at what the triggers are. And the 5 triggers, let me see, 5 triggers: case building, storytelling, message assuming, cup stuffing. Now, the second thing is when you're being present, getting present, that was the communication star. So what you want is you want your lover, and this is what you want for yourself too, but your lover to feel heard, understood, and valued. And when you're communicating, you want to have a lover that hears you, understands you, and values you. And when you're communicating, you want to speak from consciousness, compassion, courage. There you go. Then we went into the 7 keys. And I just said that it's habits, patterns, and beliefs that on a regular basis increase the amount of love, intimacy, and understanding that you have, that you get into habits like going out for date night. Date night is out. It's well, I won't say it's uncomfortable, but it's a stretch. You've got to do stuff. So that's something that what it is. Though date night is date night a deposit or a withdrawal? It's a friggin' deposit. Make the regular deposits. You want to have an outrageous relationship. If you walk away with just one thing, make regular deposits. Meet your partner's needs. Find out what your partner's needs are. Make deposits, not withdrawals. Enter their world and communicate in a way that helps them enter yours. And what you do is, and this was the clumsiest of them all, but if you want different results, you got to take different actions. Take different actions, you need different beliefs. Problem is those beliefs are created either consciously by a vision or unconsciously by your past. So here's the last question. What if? What if there was a set of skills that you could learn that would transform your relationship? And even if you're single, what if those skills, you could learn them and master them and use them in the future? Because you become much more desirable in the world of relationships if you have these skills. So what if you could learn them in a short period of time? So what I'm asking you to do is, if you're curious at all, sign yourself up for a session. Spend 45 minutes being really open and honest and vulnerable. Get crystal clear what you want in a relationship. What needs do you want? And what's not working? What's in your way? What's challenging you from having what you want in the relationship? And don't let, see, here's all the reasons not to do that. What would others say? Will my lover change? My lover's never going to change. I've tried this before. It takes time. It takes money. In my past, I was never able to. See, there's a million reasons not to do this. There's only one reason to do it, because you want to have the relationship of your dreams. Is it simple? No. Relationships can be incredibly complex. What I've tried to do is create a simpler, not simple, but simpler system that anybody can learn. And I've used this. I had one couple come to me, and they had had a grudge for over 20 years. It was 22 years that they had had this upset. And when she sat down on this couch with her arms crossed, it was basically she was committed to a divorce. And in 1 2-hour session, it was an intense session, they went from committed to a divorce to the first time they've cuddled that night in 4 years. I've had prison inmates. So I'm giving you some radically different examples, because part of your mind's going to go, well, will it work for me? And then I'll give you one last thing, and then we're done. So I've had prison inmates, maximum security inmates. I've been teaching for about 7.5 years there. I volunteer. I just go in once a month or every other month. So it's a volunteer program. And I had this one guy, he was leaving. He said, if I had learned this 18 years ago, I wouldn't have spent, well, actually, I'm sorry. If I had learned this in high school, I wouldn't have spent the last 18 years in prison. And I had Naropa University. These are guys that, and women, men and women, that not only are therapists and counselors, but they teach therapists and counselors. And they came to me, and we spent a very intense and wonderful weekend together with me teaching them these skills. And they ended up becoming my clients. These are therapists and counselors that are some of the best trained in the world. They're amazing. So it's a incredibly powerful tool. Now, here's the last thing I want to tell you. There are 3 parts of the brain. There's the brain stem, and now get the metaphor. I may not be entirely accurate, but get the metaphor. The brain stem takes care of your heart, your lungs, your breathing. Its job is to keep you alive and to keep you safe. And when it wants to keep you safe, one of the ways of keeping you safe is have you avoid any changes. Now, there's the limbic, and the limbic is more of your emotional brain, and then there's the cerebral. If I understand this correctly, you get the metaphor anyway. The cerebral is the one that's going, yeah, I want this, I'm ready, I'm committed, I'm going for it. And then all of a sudden what happens is that unconscious part of the brain goes, no friggin' way, that's risk, that's danger, I can't keep you safe, you're learning something new. So as you're thinking about this, just watch the different parts of your brain, and then the emotional part can go, oh, I'm scared, and and you back away. So what I want you to do is follow that part of your brain that is actually very connected to your heart. What serves you the most? And thank you for being on this this webinar. I totally appreciate it. Like I said, at the end, even when I turn this off, there's a few more minutes that you can leave your testimonial. What did you get out of this call? Would you recommend it to others? And if you're on Facebook, you can go to Paul Sterling and leave a testimonial there. I appreciate it. I love what I do, and I love being able to give. It meets one of my 6 needs, the need to contribute. And every time I do a training like this, I grow. And it meets my needs. So hopefully it met your needs. I totally appreciate it. I'm signing off now. Oh, I did say at the end, excuse me, this has been recorded, and as soon as this is done, I'm going to put this up on my website and send you a link so you can watch it again and again, and then you can get a list. You can just copy them down. I haven't made a list of the handouts, but just write them all down so you have them. And then at some point I will do that, but I'm not making a commitment now. All right, thank you. Again, if you want, magicrelationship.net/session. All right, so that's it. I'm out of here. Thank you very much.